Hi, it's Garbo. This is part 2 of a video about dancing back in the day. There's also a bit here about Kay Kemble's close relationship with Wilmetta Teeny Stockton. I think you'll enjoy this video more if you start with part 1, but it's watchable just where you are. If you're new to the channel, you can find some other videos on here which will give you some background and help show what this project is about. In some of these videos, I speak as myself, giving some history about Kay and the era she lived in. In other videos, including this one, I act the part of Kay and speak as her based on recordings or written materials in the archive. This video is based on a typescript of an interview Kay gave to a young journalist in 1980. Well, now I was feeling very sophisticated because I was introduced to different kinds of music: swing, blues, jazz, later on Dixieland swing, and so on in the 40s. So there were many kinds of music now that I was around. Boogie woogie, I don't know if I said that one. I felt like I was pretty worldly. Well, I knew nothing about anything. When I began to keep company with Teeny Stockton, she would ask me if I wanted to go to some of these clubs she was familiar with. She and her sister were both very big dancers, and they loved to go out, and they had been going out since they were below legal age. Any chance they could get, they would go out and dance. And they were the kind of people who always knew what the newest dances were and the new steps that people were doing and the new motions and what they were called, how to do these group dances. Are you familiar with the Big Apple? Yeah, not New York City. There used to be a black club that was called the Big Apple. We all got this information secondhand, and then it would be carried back to us by people, and we would imitate what we had heard. This Big Apple movement was that people would get in a big ring. They would stand in a circle, and then different ones would come to the middle, and they would dance and do the part that they could do, and then they would dance their way out. Sometimes it was couples, sometimes it was one or two, sometimes it was 3 or 4 of them kind of compete with each other. The white college students would start to do something like this in their own dances. Mixed in with all of that was the shag dancing. Shag dancing was a side-to-side kind of dance. It was a partner dance. You would wiggle your hips. It was a little more suggestive. People would put in these shag moves. So all of this was being mixed together, and I really didn't know about these things. Oh no, it was definitely Teeny who brought me into that world. I didn't ask. She asked me if I would like to go, but she was already out in this world. She asked me if I would be comfortable going to this club with her that she and her sister would both frequent. She said that there would be some other white people, but it would mostly not be white people, and was I all right with that? And I lied, and I said that I was fine with it. I felt nervous. I had never had deliberate racial prejudice that I was aware of, that I knew in my mind I had. I didn't feel like I was that way. My parents were fairly tolerant, but on the other hand, where we lived, there were very few blacks or anybody else that was not a white person. So you never really got a chance to test out your ideas, if you know what I mean. And then as I came onto the air base, at that time in the military, I'm sorry to say that black men were sent to do dangerous, scary fighting, but stateside, they were often not seen as fitting in, definitely not officer. They would often have more, I hate to say it, the menial type jobs. They would be porters or drivers or work in kitchens. Sometimes they worked for the white officers in their homes as sort of like a butler or a chauffeur, and that's how it was. So I saw these people, but the different social classes and the races, they didn't mix together. I'm not saying it was right. I didn't think it was a good idea the way we were living, but that's just how it was done. And if you tried to mix more than other people were comfortable with it, you could really have some problems, because people would point out some situation that would be against the government or against our country or something if you were going to start some kind of trouble by being selfish or careless. Something like that. It doesn't make sense to me now, and it really didn't then, but you understood you were being warned. So I said that I would be comfortable going to the club, but I was nervous. At the same time, Teeny Stockton was the most interesting person I had ever met in my entire life. So talented, so smart, so funny. She just radiated a lot of charm. And so if she had said, did I want to go into the mouth of hell and see what that was like, I have to admit I would have gone along and at least stood at the, well, I don't know if they have gates, like the pearly gates, or whatever they have in hell. I would have gone at least in and peeked down around the edges and see what was going on there. So I went along, and it was fine. Nobody gave me a second look. No one cared that I was there. Everyone was there to dance, have fun, be with their friends, and it was crowded and busy and dark. I got in there, and it took me a little while to adjust, because I was from this world where we girls danced together in the gymnasium because it was a women's college, but there was nothing personal about it. The girls didn't think a thing of it. But if you were the kind of person who would make an emotional attachment to another girl, that wouldn't have been so comfortable if you thought about it a lot, or I was leaning that way and had had some experiences that way, but I was young and I didn't think about being, I don't know how to say it, so social. I had a special friend while I was in school, and then we shared a home above her parents' hardware store when we both graduated. And they thought it was nice because they liked having two girls they could watch after each other, share expenses, and so on and so forth. And at that time, I didn't feel that it was necessary to explain to the whole world every little detail of our personal life. That didn't make sense to me. It was, yes, you've anticipated me here with your question. They did have gay and lesbian people there, but they didn't call them that. I mean, I wasn't familiar. These are people all knew each other. They worked together. They lived near each other or had other social bonds, which I didn't have with any of them. So, of course, they were their own group or clique or whatever you want to call it, and I was an outsider who was just there visiting. There was only so much I was going to be on the inside of things, and that was fitting. That's correct, right? There may have been language or words that people said, but nobody was paying any attention to who danced with who. It was mostly men dancing with women in the club, which was called something like, I want to say the 50-50 Club, but it might have been the 60-40 Club or the 40-60 Club or something like that. I was trying to read all kinds of mysterious meanings into it. Later, Teeny said it was just because it was the address on the street, that it was like at the 5050 or address. The club itself was interesting. I had never seen two women dance together in the club or two men dance together, either slow dance or partner dancing. So it was a little, I wouldn't say it was shocking. No, I wouldn't say shocking, but I had to adjust a little bit. I think if you had been raised very religiously, we had religion in my home, and it was strict in its own way, but matters like this, they weren't the major focus of it. It wasn't a lot of condemning. I think if you were raised a certain way, it probably made you very uncomfortable. But within a few minutes, I got used to it. There were people who were partnered together, and there were other people, they were just dancing with each other because there were two of them, and they both wanted to dance, and they didn't have a person of the other sex dance with, perhaps. I don't know. And a few people dance by themselves, or they dance in a little group. And this is where I found out that I was not a big fish in a little pond. I was a little fish in a big pond. Well, just the types of music and the type of dance somebody would travel. They'd gone somewhere and they would come back and they had learned something or seen something. Or you would see something in one of these movies. You know, there are movies about dancing in clubs and jazz in the movie theater. Sometimes you would see people doing some of these dances, and then you would come home and try to imitate it. And then there were dances where people would make them up. Oh yes, I totally remember the style of dancing that just threw me for a loop, and it was jive. Do you know jive? Yes, like the hand jive. So jive was, it means nonsense or frankly bullshit. Making things up, or you're imitating somebody. You think they have a funny walk, then you do a jive walk and you're imitating them. Jive was a way of being fun, but it was also really a way, if you got treated badly in the world, if you got told that you couldn't go in a washroom, or you're not welcome in a club, or you couldn't enroll in a certain school, or you had to sit in the back part of the bus and so on, and get paid less, have less of everything. I don't care how kind and sweet your personality is. You know that's going to bother you, and you know that's going to get you. I felt like a lot of that dancing was a way to, like a tea kettle, where you'd let some of your steam out the top, in the cartoons where steam comes out of somebody's ears because they're mad. Sometimes that jive was at the expense of people like me, and I didn't mind. I understood it was being silly. It wasn't meant to be mean-spirited. It was a commentary, and it was a lot more kind than some of the things that the white people I was around were saying about black people. What the black people were saying about the white people was funnier and more kind, generally. Of course, I was there, so who knows. The jive was a softer way to express your opinion and get some of that off you so that you could go on with your life. So let me think here. What did they do in their jive? One of it was just making faces. You'd let your mouth hang open like you were real surprised by what the other person was doing. Or you would nod your head like really up and down, like yes, 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 or shake your head, no, 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 no. Point at the other person or point to yourself. Flapping your knees in and out. Not like the Charleston thing, like the bee's knees, you get down and put your palms back and forth, over your knees. It wasn't that, but they just like the knee wiggle. That was a jive thing. Get up on your toes and then waggle your knees in and out. They would do back bends. You'd be dancing with a partner and then you'd just turn yourself. You remember that toy, that slinky toy? You turn yourself over and do a back bend and have your knees really bent. They would do a Popeye, like the Popeye the Sailor. You put your one hand on your stomach and the other hand you put backwards behind, so the back of your hand is against your back, and you would do that ship ahoy thing, tilt back and forth. Oh, I know, another one. You would take your head and do like a pigeon, like in the city, like you put your head forward like you were going to peck the other person, and they would act like they were going to peck you, so you put your faces back and forth together. That was jive. Oh gosh, I can't remember all the ones. Sometimes they'd get hold of the person and hold them under the arms, and they would be legs in like dance position and drag them along the floor and things like that. So all of that was jive. Of course, I was a lot more stiff in my body than what I knew to do was to follow the steps of a dance, to imitate. I wasn't aware you were supposed to express something personal about yourself. That wasn't what I had ever grown up with. Most of the time, people were adding their own variation. They were changing it around. They were putting the dance combos together, the little steps and so on. And they were being more creative and more innovative, whereas the people that looked like me were more concerned with doing things correctly and studying someone who said, oh yes, this is how you do the dance, and then you would do it until you got to a club and nobody else was doing it that way. So really, I don't know that the way we were doing it made sense, but that's the way I raised. So of course, then when Teeny and I would go out on the dance floor, she was very fluid. She and her sister were both just easy, flow with it, move so gently, but not necessarily always gentle, vigorous too, enthusiastic too, but gracefully and in control. That's it. Had control of their bodies. You felt like they were inside themselves and they knew how to do the right amount of keeping the form together, but also how to do a little something else with it. Not unlike when you're playing a musical arrangement and you start out playing the melody and the accompaniment in the regular way, and then you go back, especially if you're going to be repeating, say, for a dance number, and you try to put a little something into it. Every time you try to express something a little different, have a different set of instruments carry it, or be more staccato, or smooth it out, or syncopated, or whatever you're going to do with musical expression. It was the same thing. So Teeny and I discovered very quickly on the dance floor how different our personalities were. And I remember that when we came off the floor and went to get something to drink, Teeny said to me, "Mercy, you certainly dance like a white person." And I said, "Well, Teeny, I am a white person." And we had a laugh. I never could emulate the style of dancing that she grew up doing. You know, it was a lifelong thing with her, and she and her family danced, and Teeny and her sister danced. So I was never going to have that same kind of familiarity with it, but I like to think that maybe I didn't end up as quite such a little fish in a big pond. Maybe I was a small to medium fish. We'll call it that. How's that? I've enjoyed it too. Thank you very much. I had a good time talking with you today about this. I appreciate your taking the time. Thank you.